I was drinking my morning coffee when I heard someone messing with my backup generator outside. And within seconds, I knew my peaceful Tuesday in Greenville, South Carolina, was about to turn into absolute chaos. I threw open my front door to find Barbara Pemberton, the HOA president, literally siphoning diesel fuel from my commercial-grade generator into a red plastic container. Not just any generator either, but the Caterpillar diesel unit that could power a small hospital. The same unit that was contractually obligated to provide backup power to the Greenville County Courthouse 3 blocks away. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted, storming across my front lawn in bare feet. Barbara jumped, nearly dropping the siphon hose. She recovered quickly, straightening up with that signature entitled expression that made me want to scream. "Oh, Yosef, good morning. I'm confiscating this fuel." "You're what, confiscating it?" Section 12. Subsection B of the HOA bylaws clearly states that no homeowner may store more than 5 gallons of fuel on their property. This, she gestured at my 500-gallon diesel tank connected to the generator, is a clear violation. I stared at her, genuinely wondering if she'd lost her mind. "Barbara, that's not just fuel. That's emergency backup fuel for the county courthouse. I have a contract with the county. I'm the designated emergency power supplier." She waved her hand dismissively, fuel sloshing in her container. "I don't care if you have a contract with the president. The HOA rules are clear. I've already removed 10 gallons, and I'll be arranging for the rest to be properly disposed of." Disposed of? Do you have any idea what you're talking about? That diesel costs $4 a gallon right now, and more importantly, if there's a power outage, the courthouse needs that generator running within 60 seconds. It's in my contract. There are servers, security systems, and holding cells that all require uninterrupted power. Barbara set down her container and pulled out a folded piece of paper from her designer purse. "I have a copy of the violation notice right here. You have 48 hours to remove this," she pointed at my generator setup, "or face daily fines of $500. You can't be serious." Deadly serious. And frankly, Yosef Yankov, you should have thought about this before installing such an eyesore in your front yard. It's bringing down property values. The generator sat behind a decorative fence I'd built specifically to hide it from street view. The diesel tank was underground. The only visible parts were the exhaust pipe and the control panel, both painted to match my house's trim. It's barely visible from the street. It's visible to me. I can see it from my living room window. Barbara lived across the street and 2 houses down. She'd need binoculars to see my generator from her window. "Barbara, you're making a huge mistake. That generator isn't just my property. It's critical infrastructure for the county. I have a 15-year contract that I'm 8 years into. The county pays me $12,000 annually, plus maintenance costs. If you interfere with this contract, you're not just violating my rights, you're potentially creating a public safety hazard." She picked up her fuel container. "Then you should have reviewed the HOA bylaws before signing your county contract. Not my problem. 48 hours, Yosef. And I'll be keeping this fuel as compensation for my time spent addressing this violation." I watched her waddle back down my driveway, 10 gallons of diesel fuel in hand, worth about $40 but representing something far worse. This wasn't just typical HOA overreach. This was theft and interference with a government contract. I pulled out my phone and called Marcus Webb, the Greenville County Facilities Manager I'd worked with for the past 8 years. "Marcus, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" His voice carried that tired edge of someone who dealt with problems all day, every day. "My HOA president Just siphoned off 10 gallons of diesel from the courthouse backup generator. She's threatening to remove the entire system within 48 hours. Silence. Then, she did what? I explained the entire situation while walking back to examine my generator setup. The tank gauge showed I was down to about 480 gallons. Not critical yet, but the principle of the matter made my blood boil. Yosef, that generator is part of our emergency management plan. We have court proceedings scheduled all week. Judge Martinez is hearing a major criminal trial starting Thursday. If we lose power during proceedings, I know, trust me, I know. I designed this system specifically to prevent that scenario. Can she actually force you to remove it? I don't know. I'm about to find out. But Marcus, she literally stole diesel fuel. That's got to be illegal, right? I'll make some calls. In the meantime, can you secure the fuel tank? Get a lock or something. I looked at my setup. The tank had a fill cap with a basic lock, but Barbara had apparently picked it or forced it open. I'll upgrade security today. But Marcus, if this escalates, the county needs to be involved. I can't fight an HOA alone. You won't have to. Give me an hour. I hung up and went inside to actually put on shoes and proper clothes. My wife, Linda Henderson, was in the kitchen making breakfast. We'd only been married 2 years, and she still wasn't used to the HOA drama that periodically erupted in our neighborhood. What was all that shouting about? She asked. Barbara stole diesel fuel from the generator. Linda turned from the stove, spatula in hand. She what? I explained while pouring a fresh cup of coffee. Linda's expression shifted from confusion to anger to disbelief. Can she do that? Just take your property? Apparently she thinks she can. She's claiming the fuel storage violates HOA rules. But you've had that generator for years. Before we even met. Why is this suddenly a problem? That was a good question. I'd installed the generator system 8 years ago, right after signing the contract with the county. The HOA had been informed. I'd even presented my plans at an HOA meeting and they'd been approved. I don't know. But I intend to find out. My phone rang. Marcus, calling back faster than expected. Yosef, I just talked to our county attorney. This is serious. That generator is listed in our emergency operations plan. If your HOA interferes with its operation, they could be liable for any damages resulting from power loss at the courthouse. We're talking potential millions in liability if something goes wrong during a trial or if evidence is compromised. So, what do we do? I'm sending you an official letter right now via email. Print it out. Give it to your HOA president. It explains the legal ramifications of interfering with county infrastructure. I've also CC'd the county sheriff's office about the fuel theft. They'll likely want to file a report. You think this will actually stop her? I think Barbara Pemberton is about to learn that HOA bylaws don't supersede county government contracts. But Yosef, you need to document everything. Photos, videos, witnesses. If she's already stolen fuel, she might try something else. I spent the next hour photographing my generator setup, the fuel gauge, the damaged lock on the fill cap. I wrote down everything Barbara had said with timestamps. Linda helped, taking photos from different angles and making notes. At 10:30, my doorbell rang. 2 Greenville County Sheriff's deputies stood on my porch. Yosef Yankov, the taller one, asked. That's me. I'm Deputy Richards. This is Deputy Coleman. We need to take a statement about stolen diesel fuel. I invited them in and explained the entire situation. They took notes, asked questions, and examined my generator setup. Deputy Richards seemed particularly interested in the forced lock. Mr. Yankov, you say Mrs. Pemberton actually admitted to taking the fuel, he asked. Not just admitted. She said she was confiscating it. Said she was keeping it as compensation for her time dealing with the violation. Deputy Coleman looked up from his notepad. That's not how HOA enforcement works. That's just theft. That's what I thought. We'll need to speak with Mrs. Pemberton. Can you point us to her residence? I directed them to Barbara's house. They left, and I watched through my window as they knocked on her door. Barbara answered, still in her morning robe despite it being nearly 11. Even from a distance, I could see her animated gestures and the way she kept pointing toward my house. The conversation lasted about 15 minutes. Then the deputies came back to my house. Mr. Yankov, Mrs. Pemberton claims she has the right to confiscate items that violate HOA rules. She says it's in the bylaws. Do you have a copy of those bylaws? I do. Let me grab them. I retrieved my copy of the HOA bylaws, a 60-page document I'd reviewed exactly once when we bought the house. Deputy Richards flipped through until he found Section 12. Here it is. Section 12, subsection B. No homeowner shall store more than 5 gallons of gasoline in an attached garage or within 20 feet of any structure. It says gasoline, not diesel. And your tank is underground, not stored near a structure. So she's wrong. Very wrong. Even if you were in violation, which you're not, she doesn't have the legal right to take your property. That's theft, plain and simple. We're going to issue her a citation. If you want to press charges, we can do that too. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to throw the book at Barbara for her arrogance and stupidity. But another part just wanted this resolved quickly so I could get back to my life. Let's start with the citation and see how she responds. If she tries anything else, I'll press full charges. Fair enough. We'll also file a report about the interference with county infrastructure. The county attorney will probably want to reach out to you. After the deputies left, I called my lawyer, David Yates. He'd handled our house closing and seemed competent enough. When I explained the situation, he actually laughed. She stole diesel fuel from a government contractor, in broad daylight, and admitted it to police. That's the situation. Yosef, this is potentially the dumbest thing I've heard an HOA president do, and I've heard some doozies. Here's what you need to do. First, get that fuel tank properly secured. Second, document every interaction with Barbara. Third, send a formal letter to the HOA board explaining the situation and the county contract. Fourth, prepare for this to get ugly. How ugly? Well, if Barbara pushes this, she could expose the HOA to massive liability. The other board members aren't going to be happy about that. There might be a power struggle. These things tend to escalate. He was right. By that afternoon, I'd already heard from 3 different neighbors. Word traveled fast in our development. Margaret, my next-door neighbor, called first. Is it true Barbara stole fuel from your generator? She prefers the term confiscated. But yes. That woman has lost her mind. Last month she tried to fine me because my mailbox had a small dent. Said it was an eyesore. It's a mailbox. They get dinged by careless drivers sometimes. Tom, who lived at the end of the block, stopped by in person. Hey, I heard about your generator issue. Just wanted you to know I've got your back. Barbara's been on a power trip lately. She tried to tell my wife that our vegetable garden violated the landscaping rules because tomato plants aren't aesthetically pleasing enough. By evening, I'd heard from 6 neighbors, all with similar stories of Barbara's increasing tyranny. Apparently, she'd become more aggressive and controlling over the past 6 months since her husband left her. The HOA had become her entire identity, and she was wielding that power like a weapon. The next morning, I received an email from Catherine Wells, another member of the HOA board. Catherine had always seemed reasonable, one of those people who'd ended up on the board because no one else would volunteer. Yosef, I just heard about the situation with your generator. I want to apologize on behalf of the board. Barbara did not have authorization to take your fuel or issue that violation notice. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow night. Can you attend to explain the situation? I replied that I would attend and forwarded Catherine all my documentation, including the county contract, Marcus's letter, and the police report number. That afternoon, Barbara showed up at my door again. This time she had Gary Peterson, another board member, with her. Gary looked deeply uncomfortable. Mr. Yankov, Barbara began formally, we're here to conduct a property inspection to document the violation. No, she blinked. Excuse me. No, you're not inspecting my property. You stole from me yesterday. The police issued you a citation. You're not coming on my property without a court order. Gary cleared his throat. Yosef, look, I'm just trying to keep the peace here. Can we at least discuss this? Gary, did you know about Barbara stealing my fuel yesterday? I heard about it afterward. Did you know my generator is under contract with the county to provide emergency backup power to the courthouse? Barbara mentioned you claimed something like that. I showed him Marcus's letter on my phone. Gary read it, his expression growing more troubled with each paragraph. Barbara, did you see this? He asked. It's a bluff. He's just trying to intimidate us. A bluff. It's from the county attorney's office. It mentions potential liability in the millions of dollars if we interfere with emergency infrastructure. The HOA rules are clear, Gary. We can't have homeowners storing dangerous amounts of fuel in a residential neighborhood. What if there's a fire? What if it explodes? I'd had enough. Barbara, that tank is rated for commercial use. It's underground, double-walled, and has leak detection systems. It's safer than the gas tank in your car. The fire marshal inspected and approved it 8 years ago. Every year it gets recertified. I have all the paperwork. What I don't have is patience for this nonsense. How dare you speak to me that way? I am the president of this HOA. And I'm a homeowner with rights. You stole my property. You're interfering with a county contract, and unless you want the HOA to face serious legal consequences, you need to back off. Now. Gary grabbed Barbara's arm. Come on. We need to talk about this before the board meeting tomorrow. They left, but not before Barbara shot me a look of pure hatred. I had a feeling this was far from over. That evening, Marcus called again. Yosef, I've got some news, good and bad. Give me the good first. The county is preparing a formal cease and desist letter to your HOA. We're also offering to meet with the board to explain the importance of your generator setup. We want to avoid a legal battle if possible. And the bad, we ran a diagnostic on the courthouse backup systems. Apparently, about 3 months ago, the automatic transfer switch started having issues. Nothing critical yet, but it means if we lose commercial power, we're more dependent on your generator than ever. We need that diesel fuel at full capacity. How long to fix the transfer switch? Parts are on backorder. At least 6 weeks, maybe 8. So in other words, this is literally the worst possible time for Barbara to be messing with my setup. Exactly. And there's more bad news. The Weather Service is predicting severe storms this weekend, possible tornadoes. If we lose power, we need your generator operational. I looked out my window at the clear evening sky, trying to imagine the chaos that could unfold if storms knocked out power and Barbara had already succeeded in removing my generator or draining the fuel. Marcus, what if Barbara tries something else? What if she sabotages the generator? Then she's facing criminal charges, not just civil liability. But Yosef, I need you to understand something. If that courthouse loses power during the wrong moment, if evidence is lost, if security systems fail, if someone gets hurt, The county will pursue every legal option against whoever's responsible. And right now, Barbara Pemberton is painting a target on herself and her HOA. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 7 o'clock the next evening in the clubhouse. I arrived 15 minutes early with Linda and my lawyer, David. About 20 other homeowners had also shown up. Apparently word had spread about the drama. The board consisted of 5 people. Barbara sat at the center of the table, flanked by Gary and Catherine. The other 2 members were Donald Hughes, a retired accountant who mostly stayed quiet, and Patricia Morrison, a real estate agent who'd lived in the development since it was built. Barbara called the meeting to order with her usual self-important air. This emergency meeting has been called to address allegations regarding HOA enforcement actions. Mr. Yankov has requested time to speak. I stood, distributing copies of my documentation to each board member and the attending homeowners. 8 years ago, I entered into a contract with Greenville County to provide emergency backup power to the courthouse. This contract pays me $12,000 annually and helps offset my property taxes. More importantly, it provides a critical public service. The generator you see on my property isn't a hobby project or a prepper fantasy. It's literal county infrastructure that I maintain on their behalf. I walked them through the contract terms, the generator specifications, the fuel requirements, and the safety certifications. Then I showed them the photos of Barbara siphoning fuel and the police report. Yesterday morning, Mrs. Pemberton removed approximately 10 gallons of diesel fuel from my tank. She claimed this was confiscation under HOA rules. The sheriff's department has classified this as theft. She was issued a citation. She also threatened to force removal of the entire system within 48 hours. Barbara interrupted. The rules clearly state that excessive fuel storage is prohibited. Catherine held up the bylaws. The rules say no more than 5 gallons of gasoline near structures. This is diesel stored underground, nowhere near a structure. It doesn't violate our rules. It's a safety hazard, Barbara insisted. It's been certified by the fire marshal every year for 8 years, I countered. I have all the inspection records right here. In fact, my setup is safer than most home heating oil tanks, which are also diesel-based and exist all over the country in residential areas. Patricia spoke up. Barbara, did you consult with any of us before taking action? I'm the president. I don't need permission to enforce our rules. Actually, you do, Donald said quietly. It was the first time I'd heard him speak at a meeting. The bylaws require board consensus for enforcement actions involving potential fines over $100. You threatened $500 per day. Gary pulled out his own copy of the bylaws. Donald's right. Section 3, subsection F. Any fine exceeding $100 requires a vote. Barbara's face flushed. This is ridiculous. Are you all really going to side with him over your own president? We're siding with the law, Catherine said firmly. And Barbara, you put this entire HOA at legal risk. The county attorney's letter makes that very clear. If we interfere with that generator and something goes wrong at the courthouse, we could be sued for millions. Our insurance might not even cover it because you acted without board authorization. I was protecting property values. You were stealing diesel fuel, said a voice from the audience. Margaret, my next-door neighbor, stood up. And while we're on the subject, I'd like to file a formal complaint about your enforcement practices. You've been harassing homeowners over trivial issues while ignoring real problems. My mailbox has a tiny dent, and you threaten me with fines. But old man Jenkins 3 streets over has had a broken fence for 6 months, and you've done nothing. Other homeowners began speaking up. voicing their own complaints about Barbara's leadership. The meeting devolved into a litany of grievances. Barbara had apparently been terrorizing the neighborhood for months, and this generator incident was the final straw. After 30 minutes of chaos, Catherine banged a gavel. "Order! We need order! This meeting is about Mr. Yankov's generator, not a general grievance session." "Actually," David interjected, "I think it's relevant, Mrs. Pemberton's pattern of overreach and unauthorized actions speaks to her fitness as HOA president. And speaking as Mr. Yankov's attorney, I need to inform this board that if there are any further attempts to interfere with his generator, we'll be filing for a restraining order and seeking damages. The county is prepared to intervene as well." Barbara stood abruptly. "I don't have to listen to this. I know what's best for this community. I've given 3 years of my life to this HOA." "And we appreciate that," Catherine said carefully. "But Barbara, you crossed a line. You stole from a homeowner. You threatened county infrastructure. You acted without board authorization. I'm calling for a vote of no confidence." "You can't do that." "Yes, she can," Donald said. "Bylaws Section 2, subsection A. Any board member can call for a vote of no confidence in the president. If 3 of the 5 board members vote in favor, the president is removed and a new election is held within 30 days. Catherine raised her hand. "I vote in favor." "I vote in favor," Gary said quickly. Donald nodded. "In favor." Patricia looked at Barbara for a long moment. "I'm sorry, Barbara, but I vote in favor too." Barbara's face went from red to white. "You'll regret this, all of you." She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the clubhouse. The room erupted in conversation. Catherine banged the gavel again. "Order. We still need to formally address Mr. Yankov's situation. I move that the HOA issue a formal apology to Mr. Yankov, withdraw any and all violations related to his generator, and provide written confirmation that his setup complies with our bylaws." "All in favor?" 4 hands went up immediately. Motion passes. "Mr. Yankov, on behalf of the board, I apologize for this situation. Your generator is not in violation of any HOA rules. You're free to continue operating it under your county contract. We'll send you a formal letter by the end of the week." I nodded, relief washing over me. "Thank you. I appreciate the board taking this seriously." As Linda, David, and I left the clubhouse, several neighbors congratulated me. Tom shook my hand. About time someone stood up to her. She's been out of control. But my relief was short-lived. The next morning, I woke to find my generator's control panel smashed. Someone had taken a hammer or heavy wrench to it, destroying the digital display and damaging the starter mechanism. I immediately called the sheriff's office in Marcus. Deputy Richards arrived within 20 minutes and examined the damage. "Any idea who did this?" he asked. "I have a pretty good guess. Security cameras. On my house, yes, but they don't cover this angle. I was planning to install more after Barbara's first stunt, but I didn't think she'd escalate this fast." Deputy Coleman was checking the ground around the generator. "Got some footprints here in the mulch. Looks like women's shoes, maybe size 8 or 9. And there's a partial tire track in your driveway. Recent, probably last night or early this morning." Marcus showed up while the deputies were still documenting the scene. He looked at the damaged control panel and swore. "Can you fix this? I'll have to call the manufacturer. The control system is specialized. It might take a few days to get parts, maybe a week." "We don't have a week. Those storms are rolling in tomorrow." Deputy Richards looked up from his notes. "Mr. Webb, if this generator is as critical as you say, and if Mrs. Pemberton is responsible for this damage, we're talking about much more serious charges than theft of fuel. This is destruction of government property, interference with emergency services, potentially even domestic terrorism, depending on how the DA wants to charge it. "I just want my generator fixed," I said. "I understand. But Mr. Yankov, this is serious. Someone intentionally damaged critical infrastructure. We need to treat this accordingly." I spent the rest of the morning on the phone with Caterpillar's service department. The earliest they could get a technician out was Monday, 4 days away. The control panel would need to be completely replaced, costing about $8,000. Marcus pulled some strings and found a diesel generator technician who could come that afternoon. When Mike Torres arrived and examined the damage, he shook his head. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. They didn't just randomly smash things. They specifically targeted the starter relay and the transfer switch controller. This was deliberate sabotage. "Can you fix it?" "I can rig a manual bypass for now. You'll be able to start and run the generator, but you'll have to do it manually. No automatic transfer if power goes out. You'll need to be here to switch it on." "How long for the temporary fix?" "Give me 3 hours. While Mike worked, I reviewed my home security footage. My cameras didn't cover the generator directly, but they did show my driveway and front yard. I scrolled back to 2:30 that morning and found it. A car pulled into my driveway with its headlights off. Someone got out, went around to my generator for about 5 minutes, then returned to the car and left. The footage was grainy in the darkness, but the car looked like Barbara's white Lexus SUV. I couldn't see the license plate clearly enough to be certain, but the body style matched. I called Deputy Richards and sent him the footage. He called back within an hour. "Mr. Yankov, we ran the partial plate visible in your video against white Lexus SUVs registered in Greenville County. Only one match in your neighborhood, Barbara Pemberton. So what happens now?" "We're getting a warrant to search her property. We're looking for tools that match the damage pattern on your generator, shoes that match the footprints, anything that ties her to the scene. If we find evidence, she'll be arrested. For vandalism, for criminal mischief, destruction of property, and possibly more serious charges. The DA is reviewing the case now. Given that this involves county infrastructure and emergency services, they're taking it very seriously." That afternoon, I watched from my window as 3 sheriff's vehicles pulled up to Barbara's house. Deputies knocked on her door and served her with a search warrant. Barbara stood in her doorway, screaming about her rights and harassment. They searched her house and garage for about 90 minutes. When they left, they were carrying evidence bags. One contained what looked like a large wrench. Another contained a pair of boots. My phone rang. "Deputy Richards. We found probable cause. We're bringing Mrs. Pemberton in for questioning. The wrench in her garage has paint transfer that appears to match your generator housing. The boots have mulch residue consistent with your landscaping. We'll need you to come down to the station to give a formal statement." I spent 2 hours at the sheriff's station, going over every detail of the past 3 days. Barbara was in an interview room down the hall, and I could hear her raised voice periodically echoing through the building. When I finally left, Deputy Coleman walked me out. "Between you and me, she's not doing herself any favors in there. She's claiming she has the right to remove anything that violates HOA rules, including by force if necessary. She doesn't seem to understand that HOA bylaws don't override criminal law. Is she going to be charged?" "That's up to the DA. But based on what we have, I'd say yes, criminal mischief at minimum, possibly more." That evening, Mike finished the manual bypass on my generator. He showed me how to start it and transfer the power manually if needed. "This is a temporary solution," he warned. "You'll need to replace that control panel, and you'll need to be here when power goes out. The county won't have automatic backup." I called Marcus to explain the situation. He was not happy. So let me get this straight. If we lose power, you have to manually start the generator and manually transfer the load. That's correct. But I can do it within 5 minutes if I'm home. I'll keep my phone on me at all times. If you lose power, call me immediately. Yosef, those storms are hitting tomorrow. The Weather Service is predicting severe conditions. We could lose power any time between noon and midnight. Then, I'll be here. I'm not leaving my house until those storms pass and your power situation is stable. I'll have the county expedite the replacement parts. We'll cover the full cost, obviously. And Yosef, thank you. Most contractors would have walked away from this mess. I made a commitment. Besides, it's kind of personal now. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside had me checking the windows, worried that Barbara might try something else. Linda finally convinced me to come back to bed around 3 in the morning. She's probably in jail, Linda said reasonably. And even if she's out, she'd be crazy to try anything else. She smashed my generator with a wrench. I think crazy is already established. Friday morning arrived with an ominous sky. Dark clouds rolled in from the west, and the Weather Service had issued tornado watches for the entire county. I tested the generator multiple times, making sure the manual bypass worked perfectly. At 10:30, my phone rang. It was Catherine from the HOA board. Yosef, I just heard about the vandalism. I'm so sorry. Is your generator operational? Barely. I can run it manually if needed, but the automatic systems are destroyed. I want you to know that the board is meeting tomorrow to discuss removing Barbara permanently and possibly banning her from HOA activities entirely. We're also exploring whether the HOA insurance will cover the damage to your generator. I appreciate that, Catherine. The county's covering the repairs, but it's good to know the board is taking this seriously. What Barbara did goes beyond HOA overreach. She committed crimes. Several homeowners are talking about a lawsuit against her personally for creating a hostile environment. This neighborhood is a mess right now because of her actions. The storms hit at 2:15 that afternoon. The sky turned greenish-black, and the wind picked up to dangerous speeds. Tornado sirens wailed across Greenville. Linda and I huddled in our basement, listening to the weather radio. At 2:37, my phone rang. Marcus, we lost power. The whole downtown grid is down. I need that generator now. I'm in my basement because of tornado warnings. Give me 5 minutes. Yosef, we have prisoners in holding cells. We have a trial in session. We need power immediately. I grabbed a flashlight and ran upstairs. The wind was howling, debris flying past my windows. Rain came down in sheets. I threw on a raincoat and ran outside to my generator. The manual start sequence required me to open a panel, flip 3 switches in sequence, then press and hold the start button for 10 seconds. In normal conditions, easy. In the middle of a severe storm with sideways rain and wind trying to knock me over, significantly harder. My hands were shaking as I opened the panel. Water poured in immediately. I used my body to shield the controls and flipped the switches. The start button was wet and slippery. I pressed and held it, counting silently. The generator coughed, sputtered, then roared to life. The diesel engine's rumble was music to my ears. I closed the panel and ran back inside, soaking wet but successful. I called Marcus. Generator is running, you should have power. We do, thank God. Yosef, you just saved us from a potential disaster. The judge was in the middle of jury instructions when the power went out. Another minute, and they would have had to declare a mistrial. The storms raged for another 3 hours. My generator ran continuously, burning through diesel at about 5 gallons per hour. By the time the weather cleared and commercial power was restored, I'd used about 15 gallons of fuel. still had plenty in reserve, but Barbara's earlier theft suddenly felt more significant. If she'd taken another 50 or 100 gallons, I might not have had enough. That evening, Deputy Richards called. "Mr. Yankov wanted to give you an update. Barbara Pemberton has been formally charged with criminal mischief in the first degree, theft, and obstruction of governmental operations." The DA added that last charge because of the generator's connection to the courthouse. "She's looking at up to 5 years in prison if convicted on all counts." 5 years for smashing a generator control panel and stealing fuel, and interfering with emergency infrastructure during a weather emergency. The timing made it worse. If that courthouse had lost power for an extended period during today's storms, with prisoners in holding cells and active trials in progress, it could have created a dangerous situation. The DA is taking a hard line. "Is she still in jail?" She posted bail this morning, $50,000. "But she's under a restraining order. She can't come within 500 feet of your property or contact you in any way." Over the weekend, the neighborhood was abuzz with gossip. Barbara had apparently been calling other homeowners, trying to rally support. Most people ignored her. Some told her off directly. The HOA board met on Saturday and voted unanimously to remove her from all positions and prohibit her from running for the board again. Catherine called me Saturday evening. "The board voted to send you a formal letter of support. We're also considering hiring an attorney to sue Barbara personally for damages to the HOA's reputation and potential liability. Several homeowners are threatening to sue the HOA because of her actions, and we need to show that she was acting outside her authority. Do what you need to do. I just want this finished. One more thing. We're proposing a bylaws amendment that would explicitly protect infrastructure related to government contracts or emergency services. We want to make sure this never happens again." That sounds reasonable. Monday morning, the Caterpillar technician arrived with the replacement control panel. It took him 6 hours to install and calibrate everything, but by evening my generator was back to full automatic operation. Marcus came by personally to inspect the repairs and authorize payment from the county. "This should never have happened," he said, examining the new control panel. "But I'm glad it's resolved. And Yosef, I want you to know that the county is prepared to testify at Barbara's trial if needed. What she did wasn't just a property crime. She endangered public safety." The legal process moved surprisingly quickly. Barbara's attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the DA wasn't interested in anything less than jail time. The case went to trial in August, 4 months after the initial incident. I testified about the fuel theft, the damage to my generator, and the emergency situation during the storms. Marcus testified about the critical nature of the courthouse backup power. The judge was not sympathetic to Barbara's claims that she was simply enforcing HOA rules. The trial lasted 3 days. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. The judge sentenced Barbara to 3 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 18 months, plus restitution for the generator damage and the stolen fuel. In his sentencing remarks, the judge was particularly harsh. "Mrs. Pemberton, you repeatedly demonstrated a complete disregard for the law and for public safety. You believed that your authority as HOA president placed you above the rights of other citizens and even above government operations. Your actions during a weather emergency could have resulted in serious consequences. This court hopes that your time in prison will teach you that HOA bylaws do not give you the power to steal, vandalize, or endanger the community you claim to be protecting." Barbara was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, still insisting she'd done nothing wrong. The HOA held a special election in September. Catherine was elected as the new president. One of her first actions was to formally apologize to me in writing and to present a plaque at the next HOA meeting recognizing my service to the county and the community. Yosef has provided critical infrastructure support to our local government for 8 years, Catherine said at that meeting. His generator has backed up the county courthouse through dozens of power outages, protecting public safety and ensuring justice can be served without interruption. Instead of recognizing this service, our former president attacked him. We're here tonight to correct that wrong and to thank Yosef for his continued commitment to our community. The homeowners present gave me a standing ovation. It was awkward and touching at the same time. Life slowly returned to normal after that. My generator continued to perform its function, backing up courthouse power during storms and outages. The county renewed my contract for another 7 years at an increased rate of $15,000 annually. Barbara served 16 months before being paroled. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she'd moved to Florida after her release. Probably a good decision given how thoroughly she'd burned her reputation in Greenville. The HOA under Catherine's leadership became significantly more reasonable. She focused on actual community improvement rather than petty enforcement of minor violations. Property values in our development actually increased, despite Barbara's claims that my generator was hurting them. 2 years after the incident, Marcus retired from county facilities management. At his retirement party, he pulled me aside. "You know, that whole situation with Barbara was a nightmare at the time, but it actually helped us. We did a complete audit of our emergency infrastructure after that and found several other vulnerabilities. We've since upgraded systems across the county. In a weird way, Barbara's crazy crusade made us better prepared for emergencies." "I'm not sure I'd thank her for it," I said. "No, definitely not. But sometimes the worst situations teach the best lessons, and you handled it perfectly. You stayed calm, documented everything, let the system work. A lot of people would have escalated it into something worse. I just wanted my generator to work and my fuel to stop disappearing. Simple goals. Not so simple when you're dealing with someone who thinks HOA bylaws override basic law. But you navigated it. That's worth recognizing." Looking back on the whole experience, several things stand out. First, the importance of documentation. Without photos, videos, witness statements, and detailed records, Barbara might have successfully claimed she was just doing her job. Second, the value of staying calm and letting proper authorities handle things. I could have confronted Barbara more aggressively, could have escalated to violence or threats, but that would have only made things worse. Third, the reality that HOA power is limited and can be challenged when it crosses legal lines. The generator still sits in my front yard, behind its decorative fence, quietly doing its job. Most neighbors probably don't even notice it anymore. It's just part of the landscape, part of the infrastructure that keeps things running smoothly. But every time I walk past it, I remember that week in May when a HOA president thought her authority extended to stealing fuel and smashing county equipment. I remember standing in a severe storm, trying to manually start a generator to keep a courthouse running. I remember watching deputies carry evidence out of Barbara's house, and later watching her be led away in handcuffs. The legal system worked, slowly and sometimes frustratingly, but it worked. Barbara faced consequences for her actions. The HOA reformed and improved. The county strengthened its emergency infrastructure. And I kept my generator, my contract, and my peace of mind. Linda and I still live in the same house. We still pay HOA dues. though they're now actually used for community improvements rather than funding one person's power trip. We still attend HOA meetings occasionally, though they're far less dramatic than they used to be. Sometimes new neighbors ask about the generator setup. I usually give them a brief explanation about the county contract and emergency power. If they seem interested, I might tell them the whole story about Barbara and the fuel theft. Their reactions are usually some combination of disbelief and amusement. "She really thought she could just take your diesel fuel?" they ask. "She really did. And then she thought she could smash the control panel to force me to remove the generator. That's insane." Yes, it was. The county courthouse has had 17 power outages since that May storm 2 years ago. Each time, my generator has automatically switched on, maintaining power to critical systems without interruption. Judges have continued hearing cases, security systems have remained operational, prisoners have stayed safely in their cells, and digital evidence has stayed preserved. That's what the generator is actually for. Not to annoy an HOA president or violate neighborhood aesthetic rules. To keep essential government functions running when commercial power fails. To ensure that justice doesn't stop just because a storm knocks out electricity. Barbara never understood that. She saw a rule that she thought applied and tried to enforce it without considering context, consequences, or whether she even had the authority. She turned a simple misunderstanding into a criminal case that sent her to prison and cost her everything. The lesson for other HOA board members should be clear. Understand the limits of your authority. HOA bylaws exist to maintain community standards, not to override constitutional rights, criminal law, or government contracts. When in doubt, consult an attorney before taking action. And never, ever steal someone's diesel fuel or smash their equipment with a wrench. For homeowners dealing with overreaching HOAs, the lesson is different but equally important. Document everything, know your rights, stay calm, and let proper authorities handle violations of law. HOA disputes can be frustrating and time-consuming, but they can be resolved through proper channels. My case was more extreme than most. Most HOA conflicts don't involve stolen fuel, vandalized generators, or emergency courthouse power. But the underlying dynamics are often similar. Board members who overestimate their authority, homeowners who feel their rights are being violated, and the need for documentation and proper legal process to resolve disputes. The generator continues running, diesel fuel continues supplying it, and the courthouse continues receiving reliable backup power. Everything works as it should, as it has for years, as it will for years to come. And somewhere in Florida, Barbara probably tells her story differently. In her version, she was probably trying to protect the neighborhood from a dangerous fuel storage situation. She probably claims she was railroaded by an unjust legal system that didn't understand HOA authority. She probably still believes she was right, but facts don't change based on perspective. She stole fuel. She vandalized equipment. She interfered with government infrastructure. She was convicted and imprisoned. Those are the facts, regardless of how anyone tries to spin them. The neighborhood has moved on. Property values have risen. Community events are better attended. The pool and clubhouse are better maintained. Catherine runs a tight ship as HOA president, but she does it with common sense and respect for homeowners' rights. I still maintain my generator meticulously. The fuel tank stays topped off. The engine gets serviced on schedule. The control systems get tested weekly. Not just because of my county contract, but because I've seen what happens when critical infrastructure fails. I've seen how quickly situations can deteriorate when backup systems don't work. That May storm 2 years ago was a wake-up call. Not just for me, but for the county, for the HOA, for the neighborhood. We all learned valuable lessons about the importance of emergency preparedness and the consequences of interfering with it. My generator will probably outlast my time in this house. Eventually, Linda and I will retire and move somewhere warmer, somewhere with fewer severe storms. When that happens, I'll sell the house and transfer the county contract to the new owner, assuming they want it. The generator will keep serving its purpose, backing up courthouse power, ensuring continuity of government operations during emergencies. That's the real story here. Not the drama with Barbara, not the criminal trial or the HOA power struggle. The real story is about infrastructure, responsibility, and the quiet but critical systems that keep society functioning when things go wrong. Barbara tried to dismantle part of that infrastructure because she didn't understand it and didn't care to learn. She paid a heavy price for that decision. The system protected itself, as it should, and justice was served. Now, 2 years later, life is quiet again. The generator hums when needed and stays silent when not. The fuel tank holds its diesel safely underground. The courthouse receives power without interruption. The HOA focuses on actual community needs. And I go about my life, occasionally glancing at that generator and remembering the week when a Karen thought she could take my fuel and learned otherwise.